Think about how we approach physical health. Most people go to the gym not because they're injured, but because they want to stay strong and healthy.
But when it comes to mental health, we usually don't think about it that way. The conversation tends to start when something has already gone wrong.
Right, like depression, anxiety, burnout. That's when the topics show up.
So today we want to explore a different idea. What if our minds deserve the same proactive care that our bodies get?
And that's where the idea of mental fitness comes in. So today we're unpacking the difference between mental health and mental fitness.
Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast in partnership with NUE, that's NUE, where we explore real tools and stories for building mental strength in the modern world.
So here's something interesting. When someone says, they're working on their physical fitness, nobody assumes something's wrong with them. No one hears that and thinks, "Oh wow, I hope they're okay."
Yeah, if someone says they're working on their mental health, people assume that they must be struggling. And that difference actually says a lot about how we think about the mind. Physical fitness is seen as proactive, and mental health care is often seen as reactive to some sort of problem or some sort of struggle. And that's the one big idea that we want to explore today.
Yeah, as a society, we have come a long way in regards to overall awareness around mental health. But mental health conversations still usually appear, like you said, in the context of problems, right? Such as depression, anxiety, trauma, addiction, burnout. These are all extremely important issues, right? But they can unintentionally send the message that if someone is doing fine, they don't need to think about their mental well-being.
Right. Mental health conversations, they often focus on treatment, but mental fitness introduces a proactive approach. So I think of the physical health analogy. So the parallels are interesting. And if we treated physical health the same way we do mental health, so we would only act when something breaks. We would only exercise after a heart attack. We would only start eating healthy after a serious disease. We'd only stretch after an injury. And admittedly, there are some that do that. But instead, we proactively strengthen the body through movement, nutrition, recovery, and consistent habits. We know, and we've been taught, and we believe that those things are going to prevent future health problems and injuries and make us feel better along the way. Well, mental fitness is really the same way. It strengthens the systems that help us navigate life, including awareness and emotional regulation, relationships, stress response, and physical vitality. So mental health often treats the problem, mental health treats the problem, but mental fitness strengthens the systems where we can develop the inner capacity that supports everyday life.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That really puts things into perspective. And you just look at modern life today, right? And all the demands in 2026 that are on us, the pressures our brains were not necessarily designed for, but have adapted to, including constant notifications, basically have a computer in your pocket, right? Social comparison that can bring on social media and such, information overload, rapid work styles and burnout, decision fatigue. And with that, there's a lot less built-in community and that connection to others.
Totally.
So most people are expected to just navigate all these demands and pressures without learning how to regulate stress, process emotions, build resilience, maintain relationships, or just understand and support your nervous system, how to regulate it. So what do you think are some of the biggest mental pressures unique to modern life, Dave?
Geez, that's a big one, but it's interesting. I've said this before, but I think social media is the biggest oxymoron. We are overly stimulated by it, and 99% of the time we're consuming social media while we are alone. So it gives a total false sense of connection and community. And we're meant to be with people and to connect with people, and it's not real connection. So I think there's that, but then also the move to remote homework, like being able to do remote work, has been great. I mean, people love the convenience. I love it. But what it means is that the boundaries between personal life and work are more blurred than ever before. Often the expectation for work output is higher. And so there's this constant on in our minds, and our brains need time to rest.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But mental fitness is not about puzzles or mind games to strengthen our brain. It's about really strengthening the skills and systems that help us respond to life well. So let me say that again. Mental fitness isn't, I'm going to do a puzzle every day and that's going to make my brain smarter. It's what are the skills and systems we need to have in our life so that we're emotionally fit. And some of those skills include emotional awareness, stress regulation, perspective shifting, resilience, healthy relationships, and physical vitality. And these are the kinds of capacities that shape how we handle stress, challenges in everyday life. And the interesting thing is that most of us are never taught these skills. In school, we spend years learning, academic knowledge, but we don't often, and there's some physical education. We have PE classes, but we rarely teach the emotional and relational and self-regulation skills that really shape how we navigate life. And maybe school's not the place to learn those, but the point is that we're often never really formally taught these skills.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. There's an analogy I like for mental fitness. It's a shock absorber analogy. Think of your shocks in your car, right? Think about driving that car on a rough road. Every car hits bumps, right? But the difference is the suspension system. Good shock absorbers, if you're in a car with a really good suspension system, absorbs the impact so the ride stays stable. Now in life's bumps include stress, setbacks, conflict, uncertainty. So mental fitness strengthens your shock absorbers, right? For the analogy's sake. Without them, small bumps in life feel like crashes. With them, you still feel the bumps, right? Stress of life doesn't go away, but they don't throw you off the road. So mental fitness doesn't remove stress. It doesn't remove the bumps in life, but it strengthens the suspension system.
I love that analogy. I'm just imagining two people, maybe even two people living in the same household in a marital relationship or as siblings, but two people are going down the same road and they're hitting the same bumps in life. But internally, one has really good shock absorbers and the other one, I don't know if you've been in a car like that where there's zero shock absorbers and every bump you feel. I think that's a really good analogy. And in some ways, we can all build our capacity. We can all strengthen our shock absorbers. And I don't know if the analogy breaks down here, but sometimes with mental fitness, it's just taking time to rest our brains and taking time to physically rest. And then our mental shock absorbers, if you will, sort of replenish themselves. And when we're always on without ever resting, then they get really tight. So I don't know if the analogy really falls that far, but
no, I like that because you have to maintain the shock absorbers, right? For like better words. So there's maintenance required.
Yeah, maybe that's it. The rest is like putting the fluid back in and the oil and the grease and making sure that they're functioning properly. Because over time, all shocks wear out. Yeah.
Right.
So there's the three pillars of mental fitness. We've talked about those before, but think of your life like a house. And from the outside, people, they might see your career, responsibilities, achievements. But what really determines whether the house is strong and holds up on the storm, it's not the paint job on the outside of the house, but it's really the foundation underneath it. And mental fitness is about strengthening that foundation and the pillars that are holding up the roof and everything. So if mental fitness is about strengthening the systems that help us navigate life, the next question becomes, what are those systems? So when we step back and look at it, the foundation really comes down to three pillars: connection to self, connection to others, and our health and vitality. And when those three areas are strong, our ability to handle life becomes much stronger. All those bumps, some of the bumps hit ourself, and some of those bumps hit our connection to others, our sense of community and belonging, and some of them hit our health and vitality. So let's just take a minute to unpack each of those three pillars.
Yeah, let's dive in. The first one is connection to self, as you said. So this is really about understanding your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, your internal experiences. When people develop a stronger connection to themselves, they become more aware of what they're feeling, why they're reacting certain ways, and they become able to regulate their emotions and their nervous system.
Yeah, so this includes emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And just self-awareness, right? The second one is connection to others. And this is a big one. I mean, there's connections is such an important part. As humans, we're meant to connect. And for that begins with connecting with ourself and self-awareness. But we are wired for connection. We're different from every other. I mean, not that other animals aren't in communities, but we're different in the way we respond to trauma and other things in terms of seeking connection first. Our relationships, our friendships, our family, community, they all play a massive role in our well-being. I think it's also important for those of faith. This is connection to others is basically everything external. There's connection to self, and then there's the connection to the outside world. And this would be connection to deity or connection to something of faith. But when we have strong, supportive relationships, we tend to be more resilient, and we recover from stress faster, and we feel a stronger sense of belonging. We have resources that we can go to when we need support and help.
Yeah, connection to others is key. You definitely can't build your mental fitness in solo mode, right? Alone. So that's a key pillar. And then lastly, the third pillar is health and vitality. So this pillar is about really just supporting the body and the nervous system. Things like sleep, movement, nutrition, like you said earlier, recovery, setting aside time for recovery of your systems. So people often forget that our mental state, it's deeply connected to our physical state. They're very separated. And when we're exhausted and run down, everything feels just a little bit harder. But when our body is supported, we can handle life and what it throws at us very differently, right?
Yeah, I always think it's hard to be happy when you don't feel good physically. I mean, we know that when we're physically sick, when we're going through an illness,
yeah,
we're more irritable. Life sucks. And you think like, why? Like my body's aching, but why would I be miserable? But they're so intertwined.
Right.
So if we zoom out, mental fitness really comes down to strengthening those three key areas of life. Your connection to yourself, your connection to others, and your health and vitality. And so those are the pillars that make up the foundation underneath everything else. And when those pillars are strong, then we've got good shock absorbers. We tend to handle stress better. We adapt to challenges more easily. And we recover faster when life throws something our way. And no matter how mentally fit we are, trauma, disaster, trial, lost loved one, work situations, things are going to happen. They're going to throw us off center. But when those pillars are strong, it's more easily to kind of recenter ourselves and come back. But when one of those pillars weakens, then the whole system becomes less stable, even if we've got real good connection to ourselves and sense of community, but we're really struggling with our health and vitality. It makes everything worse, or any of those areas.
Yeah, true. Another analogy we've used before, you think of the three pillars, you think of a three-legged stool, right? So if one of those legs or pillars is weak, then your stool can potentially tip over. It's not going to handle life very well, right? So you can have great relationships, connection to others, but be totally exhausted and run down physically. And that's going to impact a lot. Or on the flip side, you can be physically healthy, but completely disconnected from yourself emotionally and that awareness. So that's why mental fitness isn't just about the mind. It's about strengthening the whole system that supports how we navigate life.
Good point. So let's talk about therapy, like seeing a therapist, psychologist versus mental fitness. I think it's an important thing to discuss and understand because mental fitness is not a replacement for therapy. The two really serve different roles, and they're complementary roles. They're not only, it's not replacing therapy, it doesn't even compete with therapy, it complements therapy. So therapy focuses on healing and recovery, and mental fitness focuses on strengthening everyday systems and resilience. So we have a clinical advisory board at our company, and that helps guide how we deliver mental fitness in the real world. And one of the things that they and other clinicians often say is that mental fitness is really the work clients need to do between therapy sessions and the habits that they need to build. And, how many hours are there in a week? What is it, like 168?
Yeah, something like that.
And if you're in therapy 1 hour, 1 out of 168, if those other 167 hours, the habits and the patterns in your life are not supporting good mental health and mental fitness, you can have the best therapist in the world and you are not going to get better.
Right.
Because in that 1 hour session, they can unpack things and increase your awareness. But if the other 167 hours are kind of counter to that, then you're not going to improve. So it's really not a replacement for therapy, but it's completely supportive of it. And I think a good analogy is, let's say you sustain a injury playing sports, like you pull a muscle. Physical therapy will help return that muscle back to health. If you've torn a muscle, you might need to go see a physical therapist. And so the analogy there would be sort of like a mental health therapist. It's one, intended to be temporary, and two, they're going to really get in there and they have deep training and expertise on that specific problem.
Right.
And then, but strength training, and let's just for the sake of analogy, strength training is like mental fitness, that's going to help prevent future injury. Both are valuable. That same strength training reduces likelihood of an injury in the first place, if that was happening before the injury, and it helps in the recovery process as well as preventing future injury. It doesn't mean just because you're doing strength training that you're never going to have an injury, but the more consistent you are at that, the less likely you are to have injuries. And then when you do, you may have to go see a therapist. And then once that's kind of back in shape, then you got to continue with those daily habits and patterns. Otherwise, you're more likely to re-injure yourself. And I think that's often why therapy for some lasts really long term. One, there's also the severity of the issue, right? A light injury or a light trauma can be a shorter period, and sometimes we need longer periods of therapy. But at the end of the day, we need to be doing all these other things in our life, supporting all these three pillars. And if we're doing that, then our therapy is going to be more effective, and the effectiveness of it's going to be better. But it's also the amount of time we need to spend in it is probably going to be reduced because our life is supporting mental health.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love that. So then the question becomes, what does mental, you said 167 hours, right, of the week outside of that one. And, hopefully a lot of that you're sleeping, but
you should be sleeping a third of those.
A third of those at least. But those other hours, what does mental fitness look like there, right? What does mental fitness look like every day? And it's built through small, consistent practices. It's usually not, and it's not one big thing. It's the small habits and behaviors that strengthen those pillars over time. So some examples might include things like something as simple as daily reflection, right? Taking a few minutes to reflect on your day, noticing what went well, what was difficult, what you learned, kind of organizing things in your brain, right? That kind of reflection strengthens your connection to self. Or
would you think gratitude journaling or something would belong in that sort of daily reflection?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Gratitude journaling, reflecting to even people, right? And then relationships as well with people, maintaining real human connection in the modern world. You talked about, how social media is kind of backwards that way, but that could be as simple as reaching out to a friend, right? A text or a call, having a meaningful conversation, investing time in the relationships that matter in your life. Life can get so busy, and that's so easy to put on the back burner, but these moments strengthen your connection to others. So yeah, there's a couple examples: reflection, relationships.
All right. This show is all about mental fitness. And here's something most of us don't admit. Everyone has those moments when you feel overwhelmed, stuck, or unsure, and what's actually going on in your head. That's why we built New. New is a mental fitness platform designed to help you clear your thoughts, reflect, notice patterns, develop habits, and get support that fits who you are. It remembers your goals, your wins, the things you're working on, and helps you stay on track. Not therapy, not toxic positivity, just real support when you need it. If you want to be part of the early access group, head to talkwithnew.com. That's talkwithnue.com. Sign up now and get 3 months free. I hate to come across like I'm just anti-social media, but I got to just say one thing in terms of if we're thinking of those daily habits, that I'm not saying social media is wrong, but do not think that engaging in social media on a daily basis is checking the box on connecting to others. We're talking real connection. And social media, more often than not, is actually counterproductive in terms of how we feel connected and feel about ourselves. I'm not saying it's inherently evil. I think there can be good things in social media. But if you're thinking about these 3 pillars and what can it mean in my daily life and under connection to others, and you're trying to think, how can I connect to people and have, strengthen my friend relationships? Social media is probably not a part of that. We're talking like a phone conversation or a one-on-one conversation or spending physical time together. So sorry, I just get off my social media soapbox.
No, it's a good point. It's a good clarifying point.
But then supporting your physical state on a daily basis, can't emphasize this enough, but prioritizing sleep is the biggest thing. And really loving sleep, not looking at it as a job or a duty, but really enjoying that time. Moving your body on a daily basis. And we've had whole episodes just on this, and this is not necessarily intense training, although intense physical exercise is good, but daily movement, even if it's just a simple 10-minute walk, but just making sure if you're thinking about your physical state, prioritizing sleep, prioritizing daily movement, taking breaks when you need recovery physically. And, these things, they support your health and vitality, which directly affects your mental state. And we didn't even get into nutrition, but that's a whole area. Mm-hmm. But then emotional awareness, some things each day. So simply noticing when you're feeling what you're feeling in the moment instead of pushing it away. Just being aware. And kind of asking those questions when you're feeling really stressed or maybe a little down one day, really trying to take some time to reflect and think, what is causing that? And that will increase your self-awareness. And when you become more aware of your emotions, you're much able, better position to regulate them. And then recovery, giving your nervous system time to rest. We talk about physical rest, but you also need mental rest. And so that might mean time outside, quiet time, stepping away from screens, doing something that helps recharge you. I think one thing that we've learned is laying down to rest while scrolling, while it might feel restful, is doing the exact opposite to our brain. Our body might be in a restful state, but our brain is in a hyperactive state. And so resting your mind and scrolling, stimulating content on the phone, that's not rest.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said about our emotional awareness. That's obviously connected to connection to self, right? That first pillar we talk about. And I think it's really important, and it supports every other pillar. And I think it's arguable that connection to self is a good first one to focus on. And the reason being is if you don't understand what's happening inside you, it's very hard to improve your relationships or take care of your physical well-being, right? If you're not noticing these signals, right? Self-awareness is really the starting point that allows the other pillars to work and function well.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
So those are just a few examples, but the key idea here is that mental fitness isn't something you do once. It's something you practice over time, just like physical fitness, or maybe you go meet with a trainer at the gym or something and he tells you how to do things, right? The key is consistency. The benefits of, physical workout and working out are the same with mental fitness. They compound over time. And the key thing to remember is none of these things are necessarily huge or gigantic on their own, but over time, all of these things together strengthen the systems and give you that capacity to help you handle what life throws at you.
Yeah, like what you just said there. They're easy to do, but that means they're easy not to do. That's one of the key points from the book, The Slight Edge, which one of our guests actually recommended. It was his go-to book. And reading that, I mean, the key to success are really a few small things repeated each day. And they're so easy to do that they're also easy not to do. And the reason for that is if you miss one day, it doesn't really make a difference. If you do it one day, it might not make that much of a difference. Moving one day, physical movement, you'll feel a little bit better in the moment, but it's not going to make a huge difference on your physical fitness. Getting a good night's rest one day, you'll feel good for that one day, but it's not having a lasting impact on your mental well-being. Eating well one day or eating bad one day, either way, it doesn't make that much of a difference. That's why it's so hard to stay consistent, because the difference happens and it's huge, but it happens over time.
Yeah.
And I think the best analogy I think of is with ice melting. If you have a block of ice, and let's say that block of ice is at 0 degrees, and so you start doing all these things to warm up the ice because your goal is to melt the ice. Let's say that ice represents like the challenges in your life. So every day you're doing all these habits and these things, and the ice is slowly warming up from 0 degrees to 5 degrees to 10 degrees, 15, 20, 25, 30 degrees. And you've been doing this now for a month, and the ice temperature, internal temperature is raised, but you haven't seen anything. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, one day, when that ice hits 32 degrees, it starts to melt. And very quickly it becomes water. And you notice, wow, a lot of things in my life have improved. But it didn't happen after one day.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You made me think of one other there. And it's because getting started, that consistency, like you said, is the hardest part. And it's a lot of people face this when trying to lose weight, right? Or like they want to cut body fat percentage. That when you're in a calorie deficit and building those systems of consistency, like that's really hard up front, but you have to stay consistent. Those changes are minimal, right? Like you're losing health. If you're healthily doing it, it's like 1.3 pounds a week. It's, it doesn't seem like a lot, but over time it compounds. And then eventually, if you're consistent enough, you get to your ideal body weight or healthy weight, whatever that is. And then it's maintenance from there. Right? All those habits are there and you're maintaining. So I think it's similar with mental fitness, building the systems to remove that weight of life can be tricky as you're building those habits, but eventually you're maintaining and those habits are just part of normal everyday life.
Right. The effort is building the habit. Building good sleep habits is hard because most people just have bad sleep habits. And it's making changes. Change is hard. But if you make those changes and then you stick with it and you stay consistent, I don't know what the science says about how many days you repeat something before it becomes a habit. It's like 20 or 30 or something.
Right.
I mean, it might take you a month plus to really transform your sleep habits. But then once you do, your body gets in a rhythm and your circadian rhythm sort of gets in sync. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I used to never be able to fall asleep at this time. But man, I keep getting up at that time. I'm getting my light exposure. I'm doing all the things. I've reduced caffeine or eliminated caffeine, whatever. You've done all these things to sort of improve your sleep and develop a habit and earn your sleep drive throughout the day. And the next thing you know, you're in a really great sleep pattern, and that's going to just start having a compounding effect on every other part of your life. Your desire to move and do exercise and eat well is going to be improved when you sleep. You're going to be able to connect with yourself. You're going to be present and for others when you're rested. All those things. Yeah, it starts with habit. So we spend a lot of time taking care of our physical health. We exercise, we eat well, we try to sleep enough. We spend a lot of money too. Think of like gym, all this stuff on diet foods and proteins and gym passes and things. But most people spend little time intentionally strengthening the systems that help them to navigate life. Things like emotional awareness, relationships, and vitality.
Right. Yeah. I mean, life will inevitably bring stress, setbacks, challenges, no matter what. But when those inner systems that are connected are strong, we can experience those challenges very differently. And that's what mental fitness really is, that ongoing practice of strengthening those parts of our lives that help us stay steady when life gets difficult.
So find one thing that you can do and stick with it for a week, a month. But traditional mental health care matters when things fall apart. You may need to see your therapist, but mental fitness helps us build the strength that keeps us standing strong.